Namaste, Erase fans. Namaste, nerds. This is Navanad, the one and only budget pub stomper. Today we're going to be talking about a brand new commander out of Aether Drift. My favorite set. No, it's like one of my least favorite sets ever, but I do love this commander. This is Ketramose of the New Dawn. Ketramose the New Dawn. Ketramose Hundo Dawn. This commander came out and immediately captured the attention, imaginations of a lot of cEdh players. I think a lot of cEdh players, think that Orzhov is like the great white and black hope, that it's going to be the commander to finally put Orzhov, black-white color identity on the cEdh map, and maybe be the first commander to actually answer the question, why not Tymna? Now, I don't think it's going to come through and just rip through the meta in cEdh, but I do think it's going to make for a viable commander in cEdh. But what about in budget competitive? Well, I think let's read Ketramose, and then we'll see if we can answer that question. I think it might be viable in cEdh. I think it might be oppressive in budget competitive. That's kind of the answer that I have so far. Now, I haven't played the deck yet. I just started brewing on it. But in gold fishing and just kind of conceptually, it seems like this is going to be a pretty hard deck for a lot of the best decks to beat. And I'm going to try to kind of explain what I mean by that and how we get it to that point. But let's first read the card. This is a 4/4 for 3. It's a black, a white, a colorless. Menace, lifelink, indestructible, but it can't attack or block unless you have 7 or more cards in exile. Unless there are 7 or more cards in exile. Then whenever 1 or more cards are put into exile from a graveyard or the battlefield, it's got to be your turn. You draw 1 card and you lose 1 life. So in budget competitive, where you're likely going to be against decks like Marwyn Elves and Malcolm with a bunch of pirates and Magda with dwarves and Kinnan with a bunch of big ass Nezahals, a bunch of Nezahals. Point is, all of these are creature decks, and as far as I'm concerned, all of the best $100 budget competitive decks are going to be some form, or they're going to be creature decks in some capacity, in some sense of the word. They're going to be commander-centric, and their commander's a creature. And/or they're going to be dork-based. And/or they're going to use their commander as their primary grind engine, or as a combo piece, or the combo outlet. So the vast majority of decks at $100 competitive are basically going to try to murder you with some kind of a creature combo, and or use their commander as some sort of an outlet to win the game. And most of the value that most decks get most of the time at this $100 budget arena are going to come from creatures. So what if you had a commander that turned all of your Swords to Plowshares effects into cantrips? Like, normally that's the trade-off, right? You get this really good, slim creature removal, 1-for-1 interaction. Costs like 1 mana, but you're paying sort of a mathematical penalty normally when you fire off a Swords to Plowshares at some creature, because you're losing a card, your Swords to Plowshares. The person you're hitting is losing a card, the thing that you hit, but your other 2 opponents are losing nothing. And so they've kind of conceptually moved up against the other 2 of you. So you're paying this this price in game theory terms every time you 1-for-1 somebody's creature. That's why, even though cards like Swords to Plowshares and Path to Exiles are really, really good, they're not like busted. But what if you drew a card off of them? And that's what you're getting here. With a lot of white's removal, it's exile-based removal, and every time you exile a thing, you're going to draw a card. Now, you also lose a point of, you take a point of damage. You lose 1 life every time, but that's something you can pretty easily work around. Well, for one thing, what might seem like flavor text, the fact that once you have 7 cards in exile, Ketramose becomes a 4/4 menace lifelink indestructible creature. It actually becomes pretty relevant. If you hit somebody for 4, now that's basically like giving you the ability to draw 4 cards deeper into your deck. And sometimes, the way we've got the deck built here, sometimes it is going to translate just into that exactly. So basically, the point is this commander checks a lot of the boxes that I usually, if you've heard me talk about these things in past, you know what my boxes for a good competitively viable commander are. And it checks some of those boxes while checking kind of a new box. Like it's good in a way that I never would have imagined that we'd get a commander. How do I want to put this? I guess it's like it checks one of the boxes that I didn't know I had. I think that's a good way to put it. So it's a value engine. That's one box. And the other main box is it is a combo piece or a combo outlet, kind of depending on how you want to look at it. So the way that I've built it, I think we'd call it a value engine for sure, and then a combo outlet. I mean, you could call it a combo piece. And maybe we'll just kind of use that as a segue and get into the win lines. How do we win the game? So I'll say apparently the design team for Aether Drift has purchased stock in Leonin Relic-Warders and Corpse Knights. Because as of the 69th deck that I built on a $100 budget for budget competitive, there were exactly 0 decks that used Corpse Knight. And now, as of the 70th and the 71st, there are 2 that are going to use Leonin Relic-Warder and Corpse Knight as kind of a main thing. But the cool thing about Ketramose, and really, I don't like to reuse the same combos over and over. I really try to stay away from that. But I think there's just no better way to use Ketramose. Like, you just kind of must use the Schrodinger cat combo for this deck. It's like it was just meant to do that. We've got Leonin Relic-Warder and Animate Dead are going to be sort of your primary win condition, which also means that how do I want to put this? The fact that you're able to use Leonin Relic-Warder, this guy here, and either Animate Dead or Necromancy, Animate Dead or Necromancy to just win the game, it means that you've got an A plus B combo there, but in another sense you've got a bunch of kind of quasi-layered A plus B combos, because we've got any tutor that can find one half and the other half. So if you've got one half of the combo, let's say you've got a 3-mana piece of the combo, you've got Necromancy or Buried Alive, doesn't matter which, but let's just say you've got Necromancy. Then any of your tutors that can find a 2-mana thing win the game. So in a sense, you've got like layered A plus B combos here. Now, normally, when you're assembling the Leonin Relic-Warder combo, you need a separate piece as a payoff. Let's talk about the combo. So if you weren't around for the two deck techs ago, Leonin Relic-Warder is an interesting little guy. It's not a dead card on its own. It's got you can play this and do things with it. But mainly it's in the deck to win the game. It's a white for a 2/2. When Leonin Relic-Warder enters the battlefield, you may exile target artifact or enchantment. And importantly, when it leaves the battlefield, you return the exiled card to the battlefield under its owner's control. So in our example, we're talking about putting this thing in the graveyard. There's a lot of ways to do that, but let's just say we've got this in the bin, and we use... doesn't really matter. We were talking about Necromancy, so we'll say we use Necromancy. So we cast our 3-mana Necromancy. Now, Necromancy is an enchantment. It enchants the creature while it's in the graveyard, and then once the creature comes into play, it stays on the creature and keeps it alive, right? So we've got the Leonin Relic-Warder in the graveyard. We cast Necromancy, targeting the Leonin Relic-Warder, and that brings the Leonin Relic-Warder into play with the Necromancy enchanting it. But as soon as the Necromancy goes away, the Leonin Relic-Warder goes away. Okay, so we've enchanted the Leonin Relic-Warder out of the graveyard. It comes into play. What does it do? Well, it exiles any target artifact or enchantment. We may target an enchantment or an artifact, in this case an enchantment, to exile. And we're going to choose the Necromancy. So now we've got a Necromancy that is keeping the cat alive. And the cat comes in and exiles the Necromancy. So when the Necromancy goes, the Necromancy was the thing that was keeping the Leonin Relic-Warder in play. So now the Leonin Relic-Warder goes back into the graveyard. But if you look at the second line here, it says when Leonin Relic-Warder leaves the battlefield, return the exiled card to the battlefield. So that means the Necromancy comes back into play. Well, when the Necromancy comes back into play, we can target the Leonin Relic-Warder, to bring it back out of the graveyard. Then it comes out of the graveyard and it comes into play and it exiles the necromancy. Then the necromancy drops it and it goes back into the graveyard and the necromancy comes back. And so here what we're doing is we're creating a loop of infinite LTBs and ETBs. We're going to get infinite leaves the battlefield and infinite ETB triggers, enter the battlefield triggers, and infinite death triggers. Now, most of the time that would require that we have some kind of a Blood Artist effect to go with it, like a Corpse Knight, Elias Elcor, Ellis Elcor, whatever this guy's called. But because we've got this commander, what does our commander say? It says, when one or more cards are put into exile from the graveyard and or the battlefield during your turn, draw a card and lose a life. Okay, so every time we go through this Leonin Relic-Warder, every iteration that we do, we get to draw a card. So it doesn't actually make our opponent dead on the spot. Not exactly. But it allows you to just keep drawing cards until you find the pieces that you need to assemble the win, and then you win the game. Now, it's at a cost. You have to pay 1 life per card. But, you know, that's crazy, right? Like, there are cards that do that. And the one that comes to mind is the 6 mana enchantment. That is a 6 mana enchantment, Yawgmoth's Bargain. And that card is banned at 6 mana. Now here we're going to be able to effectively do that for 2, or depending on how you look at it, maybe 4 or 5 mana. And it's not banned, it's what our deck is designed to do. So we get our commander in play, we put our Relic-Warder in the bin, and then we animate it with one of our Animate Dead type enchantments. And basically we win the game. We're going to draw as many cards as we want, paying 1 life per. But we're going to eventually find a tutor to find our Corpse Knight. Or we're eventually going to come into Ellis Ilkor and just cast it. Because eventually you're going to find these cards, and then when you put them into play, now you've set up the full combo. So in case you're not following, we've got the Leonin Relic-Warder combo set up, and we just keep drawing cards. And we draw Ellis Ilkor, and we put it into play. So if Ellis Ilkor is in play, and you go through the iterations of Leonin Relic-Warder being animated, reanimated, unanimated, just over and over, playing Schrodinger's cat, right? The cat that's both dead and alive. If you're doing this over and over, you're doing these iterations while you have either a Corpse Knight, which says whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, each opponent loses 1 life, or you've got Ellis Ilkor, which says whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, you gain 1 life. And whenever another creature you control dies, each opponent loses 1 life. So with either case, we're going to ping down our opponents and burn them all out of the games while we're going through the Leonin Relic-Warder loop. Now there's a second version of this effect. This was not in my last deck. This wasn't in the 2 decks ago, Aether Drift. I just have it filed under sets that I despise. But it was 2 ago. This other combo, even though it's like basically the same combo, I didn't have this included in any past deck in recent history. This is the Abdel Adrian combo. Now, if you've ever seen the World Gorger Dragon loop, this combo is exactly like that, almost. The idea is, I guess it's something like a cross between World Gorger Dragon and Leonin Relic-Warder. Basically, this is going to do the same thing. If we get this in the graveyard and then we animate this, we're going to set up the same kind of a loop. When Abdel Adrian enters the battlefield, you can exile any number of non-land permanents until it leaves the battlefield. Then when Abdel leaves the battlefield, they come back into play. So you can do that same thing with your Animate Dead or your Necromancy, and keep flickering the Animate Dead or the Necromancy, putting this guy in the bin, taking him out, putting him in, taking him out. But when you use Abdel Adrian, you're also able to flicker whatever other permanents that you'd like that aren't lands. And that means if you have a couple of mana rocks in play, if you've got 4 mana's worth of non-land mana, then whenever you blink this guy out, they come into play untapped, and then you can tap them and float the mana. and then when they blink out and then come back in, they come into play untapped. So you're going to be able to flicker things for value, like you're going to be able to get extra murders off your Necrotals and extra life gain off your Gray Merchant. But mainly, you're going to be doing the same kind of loop where you're drawing your deck through the Ketramose. Yeah, it's gonna have a little bit of extra synergy with the win line itself. If you have a Gray Merchant in play already, for instance, and you go through the loop with Abdel with your commander in play, you animate dead or necromancy it, and keep flickering it in and out of exile. The Gray Merchant will flicker in and out also, and you'll just burn your opponent out while you're gaining a bunch of life, and you won't have to find the other combo or the other piece of the combo to actually murder everybody. You're already there. Or if you've got Lauren of the Third Path out when you're going through this, you can take out everybody's mana rocks and enchantments. If you've got a Skyclave Apparition, you're able to flicker the Skyclave in and out while you're flickering the Abdel Adrian in and out. And you're just going to draw a mega fuck ton of cards while you're eliminating every mana value 4 or less non-token, non-land permanent that your opponents have in play. But effectively, it's going to be the same thing. You have your commander in play. You have either Abdel Adrian or Leonin Relic-Warder in the graveyard. You animate dead, you win the game. You necromancy, you win the game. Is effectively how it's gonna play out. We do have a tertiary combo. This is the so the Abdel Adrian has a lot of tertiary combos, but I've actually opened up Commander Spell Table and have that off to the side so we can look at it. It's going to be too much to talk about in one video. With all of the different pieces that are included in this deck, like when I talk to you guys about layered combo soup, man, this is exactly what I'm talking about. There are a billion individual combos in this deck. Again, way too much to talk about. If you decide to build this deck or a version of it, I just highly would recommend going into the Commander Spellbook and just put in Felidar Guardian or put in Abdel Adrian and check out all of the combos because a lot of them are present in this deck. We'll come back to this. Yeah, I don't think I'm going to go into all that. Maybe we'll talk about it a bit later. I want to make sure we get through the main combos in the deck. So there's another main win line in the deck that's going to be using some combination of Icewind Stalwart, Restoration Angel, and what's the fourth? Felidar Guardian. Now, these three pieces are totally interchangeable. They're 4 mana, and you do need 2 of them. But they have a lot of synergy with the deck as is, and they're interchangeable completely. You can have any, so it's like having an A plus B, but you have 3 A's, 3 B's, and 3 A's and 3 B's, but they're all the A and they're all the B. So if you have an Icewind Stalwart, you just need to find your Felidar Guardian or your Restoration Angel. If you have your Restoration Angel, you just have to find your Stalwart or your Felidar Guardian. So what's going to happen, we'll use the example of Restoration Angel and Felidar Guardian. So Felidar Guardian comes into play and it flickers one of your ETBs on one of your value creatures. Let's just say Necrotol. Felidar Guardian enters the battlefield and it flickers Necrotol. So when Felidar Guardian enters the battlefield, it's going to exile a target permanent that you control, in this case Necrotol. And remember, our commander says anytime something gets exiled, we draw a card. So we're going to exile the Necrotol with the Felidar Guardian. We're going to pay a life. We're going to draw a card. But then we're also going to flicker our Necrotol, and the Necrotol is going to come back into play and murder something. So we're going to kill one of our opponent's creatures with that, and we're going to draw a card. So we've got our Felidar and Guardian set up now. Now, in step before our next turn, we flash in Restoration Angel. It's a 3/4 flying with flash. It says when Restoration Angel enters, you may exile target non-angel creature you control, then return that card to your battlefield under your control. It's going to flicker a thing. That's what it says. It just says flicker a thing. The thing we're going to flicker is Felidar Guardian. So in step, we flicker Felidar Guardian. Our commander sees that something is leaving play, that is being exiled, I should say. The commander sees something getting exiled, so you draw a card off of it. The thing that's getting exiled, by the way, is Felidar Guardian. So Resto Angel flickers the Felidar Guardian, we draw a card. The Felidar Guardian comes back into play, flickers Resto, we draw a card. The Resto flickers and comes back into play, flickering the Felidar Guardian, and we draw a card. And that just keeps going over and over until we decide that we don't want to draw anymore. And then, it says that's Felidar. When Felidar Guardian enters the battlefield, you may exile another target permanent you control, and then you may flicker. You don't have to flicker. So with any of these 3 pieces, we just need any 2 of these 3 pieces. We'll not only get value when we first cast the thing, even if we just flicker Blood Pet. We're going to exile the Blood Pet, it comes back into play, and then we draw a card off of our commander. So we're going to get value off of these individually, but then in tandem, the Felidar Guardian and the Resto, the Felidar Guardian and the Icewind, the Icewind and the Resto. Any combination of these are going to allow you to just keep drawing cards until you're done drawing. You can draw as many cards as you'd like. You're going to draw into your actual kill condition, which is going to be Corpse Knight, or whatever this freaking sadistic pilgrim's actual name is, and that's how you're going to win the game. Now there are, like I was saying, there's lots of other combos, there's lots of variations, there's lots of ways to use these weird flicker effects together to have effectively the same outcome. Infinite ETBs, infinite LTBs, and like murder everybody. But normally we're going to draw our deck. Well, actually, even if we do use one of these weird 3-card combos, it's still going to draw the deck. Examples would be like the Pegasus. Let me see, 21 minutes and 39 seconds. Just heads up, guys. You may hear dogs losing their shit any second. I can tell my little puppies are winding up, but we're going to try to get through this. So basically, these weird 3-card combos are always going to involve some... let's just go to... Well, first, let's show that we're playing flicker spells. We've got Pegasus Guardian. Which ones did I go with? Cloud Shift, and I think just Ephemerate. So these are going to flicker. And the reason that we're going with these is because not only do they kind of serve as protection spells for our combos and value pieces and commander. If somebody tries to exile our commander, we can cast a Ephemerate, or if somebody tries to exile our whatever, we're setting up to go off with Felidar Guardian, and somebody tries to Swords to Plowshares our Felidar Guardian, we can cast Ephemerate in response to that. Ephemerate will flicker the Felidar Guardian, which will save it and kind of blank the removal spell, but then it will also draw us a card because the Ephemerate technically exiles the creature, in this case the Felidar Guardian, blanking the spell, drawing us a card, and then the Ephemerate will come back on our next turn and we'll get even more value out of it. And that's really the reason we're playing them. We're playing them to flicker Necrotol. So we cast our Necrotol, we murder our opponent's commander. Kinnon's down. They play their Kinnon again. Next turn we cast our either the instant side of this Pegasus Guardian, the rescue the foul. It's just a flicker. And then we kill the Kinnon again. And then they cast their Kinnon for 6 mana. And then we play our Cloud Shift, and we murder the Kinnon again. Each time we're doing this, we're drawing a card off, or we use Ephemerate, murder the Kinnon again, draw a card. Then on our next turn, we flicker our own thing, our own other thing, I should say, and we draw another card. So these are here for value and for protection. But they also just happen to line up really well with the rest of what's going on in the deck, the Abdel Adrian stuff. If you can tell, I'm not excited about trying to explain these combos. Yes, if that's the vibe you're feeling, you are not wrong. So Abdel Adrian, Felidar Guardian, Ephemerate. I think we're just going to say the end result of this is that you're going to get infinite creature tokens, because, yeah, we haven't even talked about that part of it. Doesn't really matter. You're going to win the game. That's what's going to happen. I think I'll let you kind of work out the details. But needless to say, if you get Abdel, Felidar, Ephemerate, you win. You draw your deck, you make infinite creatures, you did it. Same thing with Abdel, Felidar, Cloud Shift. Same thing with Felidar, Icewind. We already knew that. So what I would honestly recommend before you start playing this deck, or a version of this deck, go to this commanderspellbook.com, not a sponsor, and just type in, what did I type in? Felidar Guardian. And then I just searched for Felidar Guardian or Azov. And this is actually exactly the process I went through to find what's it called? The Icewind whatever. I didn't even know that was a card, but I went to the spell book to try. I was working on this deck. I thought I wanted one more piece to work as sort of an interchangeable piece of the Felidar Guardian Restoration Angel combo. Because just having that like third piece, it's Icewind Stalwart. I found this with the spell book. Just having that third piece changes the math so completely. It makes it like way, not just a little bit easier. It makes it a whole lot easier to get to one of these combos. The fact that we want to play Abdel Adrian anyway, since we're doing the Animate Dead Leonin Relic-Warder loops, and we can draw our deck by setting up the Abdel loop, we want to play that anyway. And if we combine the Abdel with the Felidar Guardian and a blink effect, then we also just kind of win the game. It's that, you know me, you know my stuff. I like that crazy, like, convoluted, layered combo soup. So we've got lots of that going on, and then we've got a lot of value creatures. Whenever possible, I used creatures that are playable on their own, but that have a powerful enough ETB, so that we can play Felidar Guardian Resto combo with our commander, without Felidar Guardian or Resto being a dead card. For instance, Aerial Extortionist. I've been wanting an excuse to play this card. I think it's really good. This is a 4/3 value engine. It's a 4/3 for 5 mana, flying. When it enters the battlefield or gets flickered, when it enters the battlefield or deals combat damage to a player, exile up to one target non-land permanent. For as long as that card remains exiled, its owner can cast it. So it's White's version of bounce, right? You're basically bouncing a thing when the CTBs or hits somebody or gets flickered or gets Felidar Guardian or gets Abdel Adrian or gets restoed, right? So you're basically bouncing their card. It's not exactly bouncing. Their card is, it's not exactly bounced. It's actually exiled, right? So we draw another card off of it. So, okay. This thing enters the battlefield, and we have it exile up to one target non-land permanent. We exile poor Kinnan again. Since it's exiled, our commander sees that we've exiled Kinnan, and we draw a card off of it. Now, for as long as that card remains exiled, your opponent that control or owns the Kinnan can cast it. So just like it's in their hand, except it's not in their hand, it's exiled, which means you got to draw a card off of it. Now, there's another bit of text at the bottom of this card that says whenever another player casts a spell from anywhere other than their hand, for instance, from exile, you draw a card. So in this little exchange, when you cast the Aerial Extortionist and you exile Kinnan, you draw one card. And now they have to recast their Kinnan. But when they do recast their Kinnan, you draw another card. And now also anytime you hit somebody with your Aerial Extortionist, because it says whenever it enters the battlefield or deals combat damage, you get to exile Kinnan again. So it's kind of an oppressive thing, especially with this commander, because you're not just going to be, you're going to be drawing a card, not just because they're playing the thing from exile, but with this commander, you're going to be drawing a card also whenever you exile a thing. So this is going to be like our little 5-mana Rhystic study. I mean, honestly, I think our commander is going to be doing a pretty good impression of Rhystic study itself. That's the vibe I get. So what else did we put in the deck? Well, we put ways to make it hard for our opponents to win. And in particular, we chose ways that would allow us to draw cards off of our opponent's inability to win. Lion Sash. This is... It's an equipment, technically. I don't know if you'll equip it, maybe. But it's a 1/1 for 2 that you can turn into an equipment. You can reconfigure it. But just even as a base case, it's a 1/1 for 2 that has the ability to pay 1 white mana, exile target card from a graveyard, and if it's a permanent card, put a +1/+1 counter on Lion Sash. So this gets bigger and bigger. You can put it on a dude. Maybe you put it on your Aerial Extortionist and start beating people to death with your big old flyer. But primarily, you're exiling your opponent's breach fodder or reanimation targets or whatever, just their graveyard. Maybe they're trying to build up fodder to cast their treasure cruise or whatever. It's usually pretty good to have things in your graveyard. The more competitive you play, the more true that is. And Lion Sash says, fuck all that, I'm going to take it. Not only am I going to take it, but since I'm exiling a thing, I'm going to draw a card off my commander. And there's other versions of that effect. For instance, Purify the Grave. If you've not seen this, and you probably haven't, I don't know why you would have. I did a lot of research on this deck, and I didn't... these aren't all cards that I found on in other people's cEdh lists or other versions of the deck on Moxfield. It's not all cards that I found on EDH Rec. It's not all cards I found on the fucking spell book. I did a lot of research. It's all of those things and more. And some of it came right out of my dome. Off my memory. But Purify the Grave. This is a 1 white mana to exile a card from a graveyard. Remember, you're drawing a card whenever you exile a card. So you cast this, you exile a card, you draw 1 card. Then for 1 more white mana, you can flash it back. When you flash it back, you exile a card and draw a card. That's 2 cards. But also, when you flash back any card, the card that you flash back also exiles. So that's 3 cards. So this is our little Ancestral Recall. It's 2 mana Ancestral Recall, but it's got the upside of taking 2 things out of players' graveyard or graveyards. So we're looking for exile, right? Cremate. This is 1 black mana, exile a card from a graveyard, which is going to cause you to draw a card, and draw a card. So 1 black mana, draw 2, exile a thing. Of course, we've got Dark Ritual, ways to get our creatures into the bin. Because, really fundamentally, we are fundamentally a reanimator strategy. But we're also kind of a control strategy. Like Orzhov control, I think, is going to be absolutely viable and real. We don't have a tremendous amount of counterspells, but we do have some. We've got spells that function as virtual counterspells, like Imp's Mischief. This is a counterspell for a counterspell, and more. You get to redirect a spell with Imp's Mischief for a black and a colorless. You can blank interaction with Ephemerate and Cloud Shift, so they'll work effectively like counterspells in a lot of cases. Then you've got Reprieve, which basically is a counterspell. It's return target spell to its owner's hand, draw a card. So if you haven't caught on yet, we're going to be drawing a boatload of cards with this deck. Path to Exile, Swords to Plowshare. But now, while Soul Partition, this is a great one for the deck. This is, again, that kind of white version of Bounce. I was just having a thought. What's the guy? There's one I missed. You're going to see a live edit in real time. There's 1 card that I added last. This was the 100th card, and I am not sure about it. I'm going to put this into the considering board if I can remember what the hell it was. Oh, it's a ritual. It's Bubbling Muck. Not totally sure about this. And what's that? There's the white creature card. When somebody wins a tournament, they're able to make their own... Oh, shit. I'm going to pause this and find this thing, guys. I really think it's a must here. Oh, hell, guys. Well, I found the card. The good news is it has a pretty good ETB. The bad news is this says when Elite Spellbinder, this is the one I was thinking of, when it enters the battlefield, you can look at target opponent's hand and exile a non-land card from it. So you exile the card from their hand. You don't exile it from the battlefield or the graveyard. Hell, I thought I was onto something. For as long as that card remains exiled, its owner may play it. But the spell costs 2 more to cast. I don't know. Maybe this is better than Bubbling Muck. Maybe it's not. I don't know. I'll let you decide what you want to do with your build. I think Bubbling Muck is pretty good, but you really have to have a lot of... it's real good in a mono black deck, for sure, 100%. cEdh quality, depending on your land base. Here we've got exactly 12. Yeah, I don't know if that's enough. But then again, if you have two swamps in play, Bubbling Muck is a ritual. If you have 3, it's busted. Elite Spellbinder has Flicker. I think I like Elite Spellbinder better. I'm going to move this to the considering board. Let's see, move to considering, and you saw a live in real-time edit and heard a dog whining. Ever heard a dog whine? That is a full-grown pit bull. Just whiny little bitch. Whiny, literally, whiny bitch. What else do we got going on here? So we've got all of our exile stuff, obviously. We've got control stuff. We've got tutors. I want to read this Extortionist. Does this have a little bit of extra overlay? Whenever another player casts a spell from anywhere other than their hand, draw a card. It does. So with the Aerial Extortionist, if we hit somebody with our Elite Spellbinder and we exile their hand, or their card from their hand, once they recast it, we get yet another trigger off of the Aerial Extortionist. I think this Extortionist is going to be pretty big in this deck. I really do. Also, if we cast Soul Partition, this is again a white bounce spell, quote unquote, but it is exile target non-land permanent. For as long as that card remains exiled, its owner may play it, but if it's an opponent, they have to pay 2 additional mana for it. So it's almost like a kill spell against a commander, right? Because it's like it comes with commander tax. And you know what a pain in the ass it is to have your commander killed. Well, this kind of does that, but it does that to any permanent, any non-land permanent. But not only that, if your commander's in play, you draw a card off of it. But wait, there's more. If somebody tries to kill your shit, you can bounce it, and you don't have to pay the extra 2 mana tax on things that you bounce. So it's really, really good here. Obviously, Swords to Plowshare, probably the best card in the deck with your commander in play. I thought actually that we could use a little bit more removal. Maybe. Vendetta is another one that it's not an exile effect, but it is just a 1 black mana, instant speed creature removal. I have liked a lot. In my experience, I think it's quite good. You could cut this for, I don't know, Bubbling Muck. There's Vanishing Verse. This is fantastic. And this is 16 cents on a $100 deck. That's fantastic. It is exile target mono-colored permanent. Think about how many things are one color that you don't want to exist. Instant speed, but most of the time you're going to cast it on your main phase because guess what? It's also a cantrip as long as you have your commander out. And you do, because it's indestructible. Not only is it indestructible, but it's your commander, so you've got access to it. Not only that, but you can hit it with your mini ephemerate type things to stop it from getting whacked by somebody else. We've got our 2 grave tutors, Unmarked Grave, Buried Alive, and Entomb. Yes, we spent the like $8 on Entomb. I think it's necessary in this kind of deck. I wanted to have more control stuff, and I thought like board wipes are pretty good in control decks, but the problem is we're playing a lot of creatures. We've got 19 creatures. Now some of them aren't really creatures, like Blood Pet is more like a ramp spell, and some of these are just finishers that we're going to use to try to we're not going to play until we're trying to win, but you know, there are some creatures. So I thought the best thing to do would be to play Dam, which also is tutorable off of Shred Memory. Shred Memory, oh, that's another like big get for this deck. For 59 cents, this is black-white, instant, remove up to 4 target cards in a single graveyard from the game, draw a card. So this is a card draw spell that exiles things from graveyards, but also it's just got Transmute 3, you pay black, 1, discard this, and find any 2 mana spell like Dam. Even though Dam generally costs 4 mana, that's the overload cost. So it is technically a 2 mana spell, which means you can find it with Shred Memory. Heliod's Intervention. This is going to be kind of a 2-parter here. Like most of the time, this only has 1 mode. Instant speed, destroy X artifacts. Artifacts and or enchantments, which is pretty damn good, right? Like for 6 mana, you can blow up 4 things. They don't have to be the same kind of thing, and they don't have to be the same player's things. You can just do you can destroy a lot of things. That's normally how you use this spell. But in this deck, if we're drawing a bunch of cards, we're losing a bunch of life. So sometimes you'll just put 6 mana in and gain 8 life, and that's going to let you draw 8 cards deeper when you're going through one of your little card draw loops. March of Otherworldly Light. This finds its way into full-powered cEdh decks. It's got special synergy with our deck. Our deck is $100 and it's 64 cents, so it's got just that little bit of extra synergy. What have we not talked about? I think that's kind of the deck. We've got some... so we should look like a Staxy Control Reanimator type list with like some Flicker synergies. It's combo soup. You know me. That's what it is. It's combo stew. Lurrus of the Dream Den I thought was really good in the deck too. There's going to be a lot of guys that are going to fit into this converted mana cost that are going to be good to recur. And it doesn't have to be a guy. It can be any of your pieces. But the interesting bit here is that with Lurrus, if you've already used it once and you want to use it again, all you have to do is flicker it. And so it's another, like a actually good, like A-tier card that makes it make just a little bit more sense to play things like Felidar Guardian, Restoration Angel. Skyclave Apparition is another such effect. Lauren of the Third Path is another such effect. Aven Interrupter. This is another one of those effects that actually makes it justifiable to have cards in your deck that say 4 mana, draw 1 card, lose 1 life, and blink a thing. Because we want these because they're combo pieces and they're layered combo pieces. But I wanted to have enough of these effects like Aven Interrupter and Aerial Extortionist where we could justify playing the 4 mana card without it being just a bad card that happens to win the game if you have enough bad cards. We don't like to do that. So we built the deck in such a way to make them good cards instead of bad cards. Gray Merchant, this might not look like a great card, but when you're drawing like 2 cards every turn, 3 cards a turn, whatever, and you're paying a life every time, you're going to run out of life. Now, in the process of running out of life, you're going to be murdering your opponents and getting just an insurmountable advantage and keeping them down, but it still is exacting a pretty heavy toll on your life total. But this also can be a win condition with Abdel, another layered combo, and just something you can blink for value. So that if you've got a Resto Angel that you want to put into play, or a Felidar Guardian that you want to drop into play, and you really don't have anything else to do with it, well, hell, why don't you, if you've got your Commander, a Blood Pet, and you cast the Gray Merchant, so you've got black, so you're, if that's your setup and you've dropped the Felidar Guardian in, you've got 4 Devotion, so you're going to burn everybody for 4 and you're going to gain 12 life. Gaining 12 life, I mean, it's a bigger deal. I think it's a bigger deal in this deck than it might seem to be. Yeah, so I think that's pretty well the deck. How are we doing on time here? I feel like not good. Not great. I wanted to do goldfishing so you could see how many this deck draws so many cards. There's some value engines too that are probably worth mentioning. We've got some stacks pieces worth mentioning. Journey to Nowhere is an exile effect. Leyline of the Void is a stacks effect. Static Prison, it's a cool thing we can do with Lurrus. It's a cool thing we can blink and flicker. It's an exile effect. It does all the things we want to do. Temporary Lockdown. Also, this is a 3 mana enchantment, and we've got ways to find it. We've got 3 mana tutors. We've got, what is it, Demir Machinations, whatever, the 3 mana transmute. We've got Wishclaw Talisman. We've got tutors. Temporary Lockdown says when it enters the battlefield, it exiles each non-land permanent with mana value 2 or less until it leaves the battlefield. You're going to have a lot more agency over when exactly this leaves the battlefield using this deck than you normally would. And this, from what I understand, it's like a standard all-star right now. Grasp of Fate, 3 mana, ETBs, exiles 1 non-land permanent. How does this read? When Grasp of Fate enters the battlefield for each opponent, yeah. So you exile 1 of each of your opponent's things, non-land things, until this leaves play. And if you feel like, you know what, I think I targeted the wrong stuff, or You want to drop this on turn 2 or 3, get it down, do a little bit of slowing your opponents down. Use it as kind of like a stacks piece. Take out some mana rocks. Then later on in the game, somebody plays something actually scary. Then you can flicker this with Resto Angel and reset it. And you're drawing cards when you do this. Blind Obedience is just a nice stacks piece that also allows us to gain more life than you would think and do more damage than you would think. We've got all kinds of ways to take out cards from our opponent's graveyards. Scrabbling Claws, Soul Guide Lantern, Bag of Holding, another little value engine. Cursed Totem is another stacks piece. We've got more ramp. Portable Hole is another thing that we could potentially recur with Luris. Same with Unlicensed Hearse. So yeah, everything's kind of woven together. It took me a long time to build this deck. I had to do a lot of homework, and then it took me just a long time to find the exact right pieces. So it's been working real well in goldfishing. If you there's the one card, Assembler of Final Parting, where you can bin your you can put your Abdel Adrian in the graveyard and your Animate Dead in your hand with one card. That's fantastic. Collective Brutality. Not only do I think that cards like Duress are just criminally underplayed, but Collective Brutality has this escalate ability that allows you to put things that you want in your graveyard into the graveyard and get value out of it. So if you draw your Abdel Adrian, you can put it in the bin by using your Collective Brutality. When you do that, you can like murder somebody's dork and look at their hand and make them discard their counterspell because you're going to go off next turn. I better cut this off at that, guys. Check out the land base real quick. I'm pretty proud of this. Look at this. Just take a look at this. Don't look at the price. Look at this. Don't look at the price. Now look at the price. $3.18. We did some work here. Alright, guys. I think that's the video. I'm excited about the commander. I was going to build the shark, but I think I kind of jumped the shark on building the shark, that DM Captain Howler. Now I'm kind of wondering about this one, but I think this is going to be real popular in cEdh, and I play a lot of cEdh, so maybe I'm going to see if I bump into this a lot in the wild. If nobody else is playing it, I sure as hell am going to. Till next time, word to your mothers, word to your fathers, word to your brothers and your sisters, word to your aunts. I don't think we've ever worded to your aunts. I feel bad about that. I want to apologize for not ever having worded to your aunts. Until next time, namaste.